Well, good afternoon. I just got through checking on my seedlings, and all this week I've been reflecting on everything that went on with my fall and winter garden. So I thought I'd make a video to kind of go through, not just for you, but also for me, the different things that I want to keep in mind for the future, and some things that I just want to reflect on with you. The first thing is that it dawned on me this week for the first time that everything that we grew in the fall and winter garden, we grew from seed, which was new for us. We had grown a couple of things from seed in the past, but the other times that we'd grown in the summer and the spring, a lot of those plants were transplants, and so I really hadn't stopped to give us credit for the successes that we did have, because we grew almost everything, well, everything that we had grow, we grew from our own seed. And when my husband and I reflect on that, that really excites us, and he likes that. He wants us to be able to grow everything from seed. And something that I like about it is if you mess up, maybe a pack of seeds cost $1.25 and you get so many, but it's different than messing up on a $3 transplant, and you don't have the freedom to mess up. Well, I mean, maybe if you want to throw money away, but that's something I like about the seeds, is if I mess up a seedling, I can plant another seed and get going. So that's something I really want to pat us on the back for, is that we did grow everything that we did grow from seed. And when I look at some of the things that were quote-unquote fail, like maybe not getting to enjoy the broccoli because it took so long to come in, or the cabbages that didn't really come in, I have to again look at the time periods. And so I look back in our videos, and really and truly the cold crops should have been planted around August 15th, and very much after that they should have been all from transplants instead of direct sowing like we did. And I mean, I guess some of the seeds we started inside, so you could call those transplants, but it was still late for them to be going in. And so the first time we planted was about September 19th, and then the birds ate up our seedlings. So that was a big lesson we learned, is to always find a way to cover the seedlings at least until they get a couple of sets of leaves, and then the birds seem to leave them alone. So we planted on 9/19, and then we planted again almost 3 weeks later. So any and everything that we did have grow, really only had that long to grow. So I really think that coming into this next fall and winter garden, that I'll be looking to start some plants in the house at the 1st of August, and that way I can kind of succession plant throughout August and September, and maybe that window before it gets cold will give my plants a lot more of a chance to get real productive when it does get cold. So that's something that I'm definitely learning from, is making sure that I get stuff out at the right time. But I'm also glad that I didn't let the dates on the calendar stop me from trying, because I did have some successes, especially with the salad garden, the kiddie pool salad garden with the herbs. I count that as a huge success. The cilantro, I've had a cilantro do better than that before, and I think that it didn't like to be as crowded in there with all those other things. But I'm really happy with how the dill went. That was my first time to grow dill, and I got quite a bit of dill dried and put back, in my cabinet, so I'm real pleased with that. And some things I would probably do different with that next time is I would change up some of the salad choices that I pick. And some of the salad blends that were in there were a little bitter to my liking, so they almost ended up being a little bit ornamental for the season. But it was a big experiment, and it was a big success. And again, we planted that all from seed, so I definitely count that as good. Another thing that I've had to reflect on is because this was my first fall and winter garden, I really wasn't that familiar with the microclimates in my backyard, the parts of the yard that were going to get the most sun. You know, it was, you know, a month into planting or so that I decided I was going to start putting stuff on the side yard, and some of that did well. Like, I think it was really good for the lettuces to be over there, but I think the carrots would have been better over there under that tree, where that was really a really sunny part of the yard. But if I don't get my crops out for the winter earlier, then I just don't think I'm gonna have that much success with the limited amount of sun that my backyard gets once the sun is shifted all the way over there for winter. Now the sun is starting to straighten back up, even level with the yard, so different areas are going to get more sun. But that was all new for me in the winter, and I learned a lot from that. Another big thing that sticks out to me, and I've mentioned this in one of my videos, is remembering to fertilize, you know, and that's again because it's so much easier to keep up with that in the summer when every day I'm looking for results, spring and summer, because everything's putting out flowers, everything's putting out fruits or vegetables on itself. So it keeps me aware of if that slows down a little bit to, you know, feed my plants. And in the winter, because we weren't out here as much and these crops are slower growing, and it's not, you know, they do totally different than a lot of the plants that do in the summer in terms of how they produce what you eat of them. And so I really want to be more intentional about my fertilizing schedule. And you know, we mostly fertilize with worm castings or compost or worm tea or compost tea or something like that. So when I say fertilizers, I'm not talking about things necessarily that I'm, you know, buying and mixing up from a bottle. It's just what I use to feed my plants. And so I really am going to get more mindful. And even for the spring and summer, I think it's just a good idea to put a reminder like every 4 weeks to, you know, feed my garden. And I think that, coupled with getting my plants out in a more timely manner, and so that they've got more of a vegetative time to get big as a plant before it starts to break off cold in December, I think I'll have a lot more success. And I know the places in my backyard that are going to give me more success. And so, trying to think if there's anything else that really stuck out to me about, oh, I definitely want to grow a lot more spinach next year. And that's a green that I grew the least of in terms of my salad garden, and it's the one that I like the most. And there are there's a couple of lettuces that I'm gonna, like a green leaf lettuce that we use on Taco Tuesdays. I will put out some more of that to continue into the spring, but it still won't do too much past like June, July. It'll be too hot and it'll bolt. And I think the green leaf lettuce over there that's bolting, it's a maturity thing more than it is a temperature thing out here. So I hope that you enjoyed this kind of little reflect on the things that I learned from my first fall and winter garden here in Arizona in Zone 9B, and the things that another thing I'm really grateful for is that I chose, something else I wanted to say, as I was about to say, I'm glad I only had crops growing that could deal with all the cold weather. And that reminded me that another thing I wouldn't do in the future is, if I'm planting that late, I would not try to plant things that were out of season just to see how they do. To me, that was a waste. I lost the plants, and it just was extra work for me that didn't turn out. So if I had those same plants in my garden that were already established and I wanted to see if I could overwinter them, I think that's a different thing. But as far as just planting something like a squash in late September and early October, that's not something I would do again. I really am glad that I stuck to having out here cold crops, because I didn't have to constantly be out here covering my garden, and I didn't lose stuff through, you know, freezing temperatures and hail. So again, I hope that you this helps you a little bit, that if you next year when you're going into maybe thinking about doing a fall winter garden in Arizona, you'll check in with my reflections video here and definitely learn from some of the things that I learned from and some of the mistakes that I made, and it'll help you go forward and have a successful fall and winter garden too. So thanks so much for checking in with us. I'm just totally jazzed and excited about our spring garden. Every day about this time is when I'm checking on the germination process for the extra seeds that we've got going, and we've got a ton of them. Tomorrow you should be able to check in. Either tomorrow or Saturday is when I'll release the video on the final process, from putting the seeds into the process all the way to when they got their little first tap roots. But until then, have the best day ever.